Welcome back to another video. My name's Carl Gosling and today I'm going to be showing you how to set up Dirt Rally 2 with your Thrustmaster, T300, TX, TSPC Racer, or what's the other one? TXXW. They all use the same control panel and they all perform very similarly, with a small exception when it comes to actual sort of force of the motors inside them. They're all belt driven. And they all have essentially the same features. There's very little difference between them. But yeah, the TSPC Racer and the TSXW do produce more torque than the T300 and the TX. This also applies to the T500, but that's an old wheel now, and there's no reason, you know, to be buying. This is more of a modern video. There's no reason to be buying a T500 these days. You can get one of the more modern ones, you know, second hand, cheap enough not to have to worry, because the T500 is an old, noisy and not very refined wheelbase compared to their newer ones. Anyway, let's get the screen capture software fired up and you can see what we're doing. So I'm just using the NVIDIA screen recording software. Is quick and easy in case you wondered. So Alt and F9 to start recording. So yeah, what you see here now then, I've opened up the game controller control panel. I've double clicked on my TSPC Racer, or clicked on properties, or whichever one it is. I've done that, and this is the first window that comes up. Degrees of rotation set at 900. That is the default. Even though it goes to 1080, the default is 900. I don't know why that is. If you want to have the extra rotation, then by all means put it to 1080, but there aren't many modern cars, that race cars this is, that have that much rotation. You'd be steering a lot, so leave it on 900, it's fine. What else we got here? So leave that on 900. You can test here. I mean, obviously I haven't got any Thrustmaster pedals, so it doesn't apply. I could test the buttons if I wanted to. There's no need to do any of that. I know it's all working fine. You're welcome to do yours. You can check for an update to the software and the drivers and the firmware. Do that if you haven't done so in a while. It's always good to be up to date. The next tab, of course, is test forces. If you've got a problem, perhaps you might want to test your forces, otherwise ignore that. It's got nothing to do with setting it up for Dirt Rally. And then the gain settings are the last one. Now, you'll hear a lot of mixed opinions on what these should be. This, again, is my opinion and how I like to have my wheels set up. I like all my wheels, whether it's a cheapy Logitech G920 or the top of the range TSPC Racer, and even if I was to have a DD wheel, which I will at some point, I want it to feel as close to what a real steering wheel feels like in a real car. So this is how my settings, I believe, make the wheel feel as close to as it can within the limits of its own physical limitations. So overall strength for forces, 100%. There is no point buying a TSPC Racer or a TSXW, which has the 7 or 8 Newton meter motor, and then turning the forces down. You might as well have just bought the wheelbase down. You know, what's the point? And besides which, 7 or 8 Newton meters is not particularly strong. Direct drive wheels are 20, 22, 25, 30, 35 perhaps even. I mean, they can break your wrist, but that isn't the point. You see what I'm saying? 7, 8 Newton meters is fuck all. So you want that all the way up. Detail gain settings, again, leave everything all the way up. Auto center settings by the game. By doing this, you allow the game full control of the steering wheel base. You're not limiting any of the force feedback options here. You might want to play with these if you're trying to get it to work with an older game, you know, that doesn't have these adjustments in the game itself. Maybe you need to tweak things there. Maybe the steering wheel's too heavy, you turn the overall strength down. Maybe it centers too aggressively, you turn the centering spring down. But this is only for old games. All modern games have all this adjustment in the game itself. So you leave these all at 100% or you're just limiting yourself. So that's really it for the Thrustmaster control panel. Leave everything default, put it all at 100, it's exactly as it comes. Leave it like that, job done. And then what you do is we head into the game itself, head into Dirt Rally. It should hopefully appear on the screen. Yeah, there we go. And we go to options and extras, input settings. You can see I've got all my different input devices here. My pedals, my TSPC Racer, my shifter and my load cell handbrake. I'll do some videos about those bits and pieces at some point as well. But for today, it's about setting your steering wheel up, which is the most important part of all of this. Now, So we're going to click on, we're not going to click, we're going to hover over my steering wheel, which is there as a primary device. If you look down the bottom there, you've got device options. Now, this is where we're going to go into, and I've already calibrated mine, and I'm sat at my desk and not in my rig, so I'm not going to calibrate it again. But it's very simple. You do what it says on the screen. Turn it full lock, press a button. Turn it 90 degrees, press a button to press all your pedals all the way down, although it won't do that because I don't have any Thrustmaster pedals. And that's it, it's calibrated. Now, the reason you must do this is because one of the options inside here is called soft lock. And just like I explained in my G920 video, which you're probably not watching if you own a Thrustmaster, that's why you're watching the Thrustmaster one. Soft lock is an option that enables the game to set your steering lock, your maximum degrees of rotation, to match whatever car it is that you're driving. So older vehicles will have a greater degree of rotation, more modern vehicles will have a much quicker, sharper steering rack. So you might go from 900 degrees on an old 80s rally car to something maybe 480 degrees on a more modern vehicle, and you'll be, you ain't got to move it far, it'll be much twitchier. So you must, but to enable soft lock, you must calibrate the steering wheel. The game doesn't let you do it otherwise. So back to the screen here, input bindings, that's entirely up to you. Set the buttons to do whatever you want. Obviously the important ones have to be what they have to be. Steering, for example, clutch, brake, accelerator, blah, blah, blah. And then we go to advanced settings. These, for this particular, for Thrustmaster at least, are a piece of piss to set up. Steering linearity, you want obviously at neutral, at 0. You don't want the steering to accelerate when you get to a certain point in your rotation. You want it to turn 1-to-1 with your wheel, and matching the degrees of rotation of the car you're in. So leave that at 0. Dead zone is pretty obvious. You don't want a dead zone in your steering. That means you can move the steering wheel a little bit and nothing would happen, hence the phrase dead zone. Now, unless you've got an old shitty car in real life with loads of fucking play in the steering, dead zone shouldn't exist. So you leave that at 0. Again, this is really for if you're running old hardware that's maybe got a little bit of electrical noise, isn't earthing properly, maybe it's tired and worn, and it's giving some twitchy input signals, you might need a dead zone. But if that's the case, buy a new fucking wheel. Don't even drive with that shit. Splash out. G920 is cheap if you can't afford a new Thrustmaster. In fact, second-hand Thrustmasters are cheap. So yeah, there's no excuse for needing dead zone and having a shit wheel. Steering saturation, 100%. Again, you want it to be when the wheel is at full rotation for whatever the vehicle is. Your wheels in your car in the game are also at full rotation. So you leave that. Throttle dead zone. I mean, this isn't specific to the Thrustmaster, but I'll go through it quickly anyway. When you press accelerator pedal, you want it to start accelerating. You want your virtual throttle body, throttle butterfly, to open within the throttle body. You don't need to be a delay. Again, unless you've got noisy ass pedals, in which case, electrical noise this is, in which case, sort the fucking shit out. Throttle saturation, same as steering saturation. When the pedal's 100% of the way down, you want to be at 100% throttle. Brake and dead zone, again, you don't need a dead zone unless you've got electrical noise and signal issues. Brake and saturation, same thing. The only thing I will say about this is if you're using a wheel stand or your stuff is clamped to a desk and your chair can move freely, you might need to turn the brake and saturation down to something in the region of 70 to 75%, because you might find to get 100%, you're tipping your chair back. If you're in a full cockpit, a full rig, you can leave it at 100% because you can push as hard as you want and you're not going to go anywhere. But if you're using a wheel stand or you're on a desk and your chair's independent of that, you might need to bring that down a little bit. What that means is if you put that at say 75%, it means you've only got to press the pedal 75% of its travel before you have reached 100% braking force. Again, this will depend on what pedals you got. Logitech pedals have quite a stiff last 30-40%, so I'd bring it down if you're not on a rig. The Fanatic stuff that I've got, very, very stiff. Again, I would never use Fanatic really using a desk mounted setup and a chair that can wobble around, but if you did, you definitely need to bring that down because there's no way you'd be able to apply enough force to hit 100% without sending yourself backwards off your chair. Clutch dead zone, I rest my foot on the clutch because I play H pattern in Dirt Rally, like I'm sure a lot of you do. You want to be as realistic as possible. What was I going to say? Yeah, so I rest my foot on the clutch, so I don't want the clutch starting to disengage or engage, depending on how you look at it. In real life, you're disengaging the clutch. In the game, you're engaging the pedal, just because I've got my footrest on it. So a tiny little 5% dead zone will do nicely. And then the clutch saturation, just like in real life, you do not need to depress your clutch pedal all the way to the floor to be able to change through your gears. In real life, you can push the clutch pedal down maybe 30–40% of the way, and you can quite happily change gear. So you want the same in the game. You know, basically you're setting where your virtual biting point is. So for me, 30% is about right. I've matched that to where my Fanatic V3 clutch pedal feels like it's on its biting point, because it simulates that by having a cammed system. And so you feel the pressure on your foot change as you bring it up to a certain point. So I've set that to match that, which for me is 30%. And so at the start of a race, I'm holding my handbrake on, I bring my clutch up until I start to feel the biting point, and I know the clutch isn't going to actually engage and make me jump the start. So, you know, I've set my revs, and it's great for a really good launch. Handbrake dead zone, there's no handbrake plugged into this wheelbase, so it doesn't really apply. I've got a separate analog handbrake, and I use those settings, not these settings, it has its own settings. This is obviously under the Thrustmaster TSPC Racer. It has its own settings under its own input device, so we'll ignore those for now because they're not relevant. Soft lock is what I mentioned earlier. You want to have that on. If you haven't calibrated your wheel, it will say here, I think, calibration required, or possibly on the other. No, definitely, yeah, this screen. Mine's been done, so it's all good. You want that on so it matches the steering rotation of the car you're in to the, you know, to your wheel, 1-to-1. Really adds to the realism of it all. So that's those settings, and then finally we're going to go into the vibration and feedback. This is really easy. I don't know why my suspension is down at 99. I must have just twatted that at some point. Anyway, vibration and feedback obviously on. Self-aligning torque, to summarise this very quickly, is how forcibly the wheel tries to return itself to centre when you let go of it and the vehicle is still in motion. So just like in real life, if you're travelling along and you steer a little bit and you let go, the wheel will centre itself, and it will do that faster or quicker the faster the vehicle's travelling. Not that you should ever be turning at 100 miles an hour and just let go of the wheel. Don't do that. That's just stupid. But for me, 50% is about right. Any more than that, and I feel I'm really fighting with a wheel, you know, in the corners. It's really trying to straighten itself up. So yeah, 50 seems to be a good number for me. Wheel friction, tyre friction, suspension, all on 100, all on the default settings. Wheel friction is a constant force applied to your steering wheel. It's basically the weight of the wheel. If you have that really high, it'll feel like you've got no power steering, and like you're driving with 2 flat tyres. If you have it really low, the wheel's super easy to turn. Now, weirdly, on the Logitech G920, you have to have that at 0, because if you leave it at 100 or anywhere in between, it literally feels like you're driving with 2 flat tyres and no power steering. So that's a bit of a weird one there. But for the Thrustmaster stuff, like I say, this applies to the T300, the TX, the TS, the TXW, the T500. They all basically work exactly the same. So these settings are a good place to be. The self-aligning torque on the lesser powerful wheels, the TX, the T300, you might want 75, you might want as much as 100. I sold mine and upgraded to this one, so I can't remember exactly what that figure was. But the rest of them, friction, wheel friction, tyre friction, suspension, all 100. Tyre friction is again, it applies a force to the steering wheel when you're cornering hard, and a weight that you feel. The harder you corner, the heavier it feels, because again, it's trying to straighten itself. So you want that all where it should be. You want it to match the telemetry data coming from the game. You know, it should be, if the game's been programmed correctly, the data, the figures coming out should be accurate. And if the drivers for your wheel and wheelbase have been written correctly, everything should be a 1-to-1. You know, you shouldn't have to dick around too much. And you can see that with these settings, because I haven't. I've just turned down the self-aligning torque because it made the wheel too strong, too heavy. And then so again, next one down, collision. That's when when you crash into something and your wheels hit a curb hard, you know, how aggressive it's going to fling the wheel, which you want it to do because you've hit something. Soft lock, I mentioned earlier. What that means is, let's say the wheel does 900 degrees, or 1080 in the case of my wheel, but the vehicle we're driving has a steering lock of 480 degrees. When I get to 240 degrees in either direction, because that's 240 and 240 is 480, the steering wheel base will stop me from going any further using the force of its motor. Now in this TSPC, it's quite solid. You really know you've hit your lock, you know. You could force it past, but it'd be pointless. With a DD wheel, you wouldn't be able to force it past, you know. It'll be forcing you. So yeah, that's what that is. You want it on, you want it at 100%. Having more than 100% makes no sense, because 100% means the wheelbase is using all the available strength of the motor. Telling it to use more than that, there is no more, you're already using it all. So it's silly. Again, I don't even know why it's there. Maybe you get some weird anomalies with some people's setups where things just don't work quite right and you need to fiddle with shit, but you shouldn't have to. Steering center force enabled steering center force itself. That is, steering center force itself means when you start a race, the steering wheel will spin itself around and center itself before you pull away. And steering center force is how much of the motor strength it uses to do that. Again, if this was a direct drive wheel, you might want to have that turned down just in case you've got your fingers resting on the wheel, fucking thing spins around at full force, 30 Newton meters and breaks your fingers. But on this wheel, it's fine, it's not that strong, you're never going to hurt yourself. So that's what that does, just at the beginning of a race, so that the wheels start pointing forward, which is a really useful option to have, because I started a race in R Factor 2 when I hadn't, the first one I'd ever done, I think, with other people. And my steering wheel was pointing over to the left and I fucking floored it off the line and went straight into the side. I looked like a complete penis. Thankfully, I was right at the back of the grid because I was shit anyway, but nonetheless, it was still embarrassing. But yeah, good option to have. So, I think that is just about it, yeah. We can turn the screen capture off. Yep, that's good. Recording's been saved. Great. So that's everything. I'd recap, but there's too much to recap. Basically, if you use these settings, your Thrustmaster wheelbase will perform as close to how a steering wheel in a real car should perform, based on my opinion and experience and my preferences. Now, you may or may not like it. But to be honest, if you don't like it, I can't see why you wouldn't like it, because to me this feels absolutely spot on. And as we just saw, most of the options are all set at default anyway. The Thrustmaster control panel is all at default. You know, all the options in the force feedback in Dirt Rally, they're all just left at 100, apart from the self-aligning torque, because it was too much, unrealistic. Everything else is a one-to-one basis, just like it should be, giving you that authentic, you know, and sim-like experience that we want in our games and in our races. So there you go. Thanks very much for watching. Hopefully this helps a few people. I'm a new channel. If you could throw me a sub, that'd be amazing. I'd really appreciate it. Have a great time, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Take it easy.